This episode is sponsored by the Association of Body Mapping Education. Studies have shown that up to 84% of musicians suffer from pain or injury that have long-term effects on their career, not from accidents, but from how they move. That's where body mapping comes in. The Association for Body Mapping Education, ABME, is dedicated to teaching musicians to recognize harmful movements and replace them with efficient, powerful, and natural movements based on the body's true design. This year, ABME invites you to Music Moves, Fostering Dynamic Connections, their biennial international conference starting June 18th in Portland, Oregon. Dive into expert-led courses in 4 instrument-specific tracks, hear from visionary keynote speaker Ann Baltz, founder of OperaWorks, and enjoy an exclusive screening of the new documentary, Music, Movement, and Transformation, The Body Mapping Story. You can register today at bodymap.org or click the link in the show notes below. And now back to the show.
I was never the best person in the room. I had major pitch issues. It just didn't come naturally to me. And a lot of people didn't think that I was going to make it. And I was just like, nope, I'm just not quitting.
You're listening to Artistry with Heart, a musician's wellness podcast. I'm Stephanie Lynn Bernards. Today, we are having a conversation with contralto Emily Geller, who is lauded for her lower extension that has to be heard to be believed and is quickly establishing herself as a singer to watch. Emily has actively performed with companies across the country such as the Opera Santa Barbara, Opera Las Vegas, St. Petersburg Opera, and the Tri-Cities Opera. She is also involved with the Pacific Opera Project based in Los Angeles, Taconic Opera based in New York, among many others. Emily has taken on a wide variety of roles and characters with a diverse array of complex demands that prove the depth and versatility of her vocal range. Emily, I'm so honored to have you with me today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You are such a vocal powerhouse and have such an incredible range that I was absolutely blown away by when I heard it for the first time. I am so excited for this conversation with you and hear about your journey, how you've gotten to this point in your career. So let's just jump in.
Sure.
Emily, tell me about your earlier years. Did you come from a musical family? How did your musical journey get started?
So I did not come from a musical family. I started singing through acting. So I didn't grow up playing an instrument. I was involved in theater, and I was getting a lot of the leads and good roles in the straight plays, but not in the musicals. And I was getting pissed. So I started taking voice lessons to improve. And before I started taking voice lessons, I thought it was something that you either, like, you can sing or you can't sing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that it's like any other instrument, and that if you train, you can improve your technique and get better. And once I started training with a teacher who was an opera singer, I got better pretty quickly. And I became hyper-focused on practicing, and any recording that he told me to listen to, I would listen to it, plus everything else I could find, that would spider off of that. And I got to a point where I realized that it was what I wanted to do. And that was through musical theater at first.
Absolutely. And, you're a contralto. So for those of us that are not opera singers, how does a contralto differ from a soprano or an alto or a tenor or bass?
Yeah, so you can't choose your voice part, just like you can't choose your voice. So your body's your instrument when you're a singer, rather than, I think, with instrumentalists, you can, sit at different pianos and it's your technique that matters. Or you can, grab any violin and it's like, that's the violin and you're the one playing it. It's much more personal, in my opinion, with the voice, because it's your instrument. So, and there are certain voice types that are more common. So soprano is the most common. And I think any soprano who's listening would agree, like, it's just, heaps and heaps of competition. Certainly a numbers game for them. It's just a lot of sopranos. For women, mezzos are next, and then contraltos are, I think, the most rare, and that's the lowest voice part.
At what point did you know you were a contralto or somebody defined you as such?
So it's not super black and white. There's a lot of, I don't know if controversy, there's a lot of different opinions about the quote unquote Fach system and contraltos in general, and whether they exist or they're just lower mezzos, or is it more of just like a type of character that, some people play. And a lot of the times it could be based on body type for casting. So if you look a certain way, people assume that you can sing contralto or you can sing, larger rep or whatever it is. And some people just think contraltos are not a thing. In my opinion, contraltos are definitely a thing. The breaks in my voice, between, for women, chest voice, middle voice, and head voice, the breaks in my voice are lower than a mezzo-soprano's breaks. Just range-wise, I can sing lower than most mezzos and sometimes tenors. So that's a huge part of it. I think the reason why a lot of contraltos are rare, other than it's just a rarer voice type, is it's hard to really kind of get through all of the muck of your teens and your 20s and get into a professional place in your 30s and 40s as a contralto, because your entire life you're being told that you're a mezzo. So I think most of the time you're just literally fighting either yourself or trying to just listen to well-meaning people of saying well, you're a lyric mezzo or you're this, and trying to put you into this mezzo box when really that's not your voice. And a lot of people end up with vocal issues. They end up with, a lot of strain with that. They end up just quitting because they feel like they don't really fit anywhere. And a lot of the roles for contralto tend to be older, I'm putting this in quotes for anyone listening, older women. And if you look the way you look and you don't fit that type that people think, they cast with their eyes, So if they see you and you're tall and thin and funny, they instantly think you're a certain type of mezzo, even if your voice doesn't really fit that. And, for a while I did that in my 20s. And it was really hard. I had some success and I was, working and singing and stuff, but it was never really appropriate. And now that I'm older, okay, so to go back, I think I knew I was a contralto when I was in high school. It was very obvious that I was different from the other girls. My voice was different. People didn't really know what to do with me. I sang super low. I couldn't sing high at all. So that limited my repertoire, hugely, greatly. And frankly, I'd literally just wasn't old enough to play a lot of these roles that are supposed to be women in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I just, as a 20-year-old, it just wasn't going to happen. So then the question is well, what do you sing? And a lot of people quit because you have to just wait basically and keep training and working. But it's this period of you're not really singing, a decade or more, you're not really singing the repertoire that you should be singing, because you're either not ready technically or just people can't really see you in those roles. Even now, I'm going to put this in quotes, almost 4, have 2 kids, and people are still you're too young. I'm I'm old now. I'm old. We can do things with wigs and makeup. For the love of God, I don't want to wait another 20 years. This is getting ridiculous. Unless you fit into this perfect little box, right? You're a coloratura soprano and you quote unquote look like a coloratura soprano and you're tiny and there's no question. Most people you're going to have opinions about your voice. People are going to be thinking oh, well, maybe you should sing this, maybe you should sing that. And you can get very confused if you try to listen to everyone, because everyone's opinion is different. And at the end of the day, you need to do what you feel comfortable with, and not try to sing repertoire or, fit into a box that other people want you to fit into.
I couldn't have put that better myself. I think it's so interesting how people use your physical appearance and how you sound and correlate the two as if they belong together. I have taken my own personal vocal journey just because I'm a singer. I'm a classical pianist by trade and jazz pianist, but I also recently started singing the last 7 years ago and sang my original music. And one of the vocal coaches that I spoke with, she had the most interesting opinion. She was like, I see all these, and she quote, I don't know if she was referencing me or what, but she's like, I see these beautiful women and they just speak in fry all the time and they try to sing in fry all the time and they're low register. And I just am so, I see them and they look so pretty, but then they just sound awful. I just was like, okay. And she's like, so why don't you try talking a little bit more up here? Like, how does it feel to talk up in your high register? Like, and I just was like, I know that you're trying to give me helpful feedback, but that's not naturally where my voice rests. Thank you very much. So it's just interesting how people can say, about any given person, oh, well, you're small, so you should be a soprano, or you're a little bit heavier, so you should be XYZ, or just totally based off of image, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's ever been something, just to speak to that interesting component that people like look at you and base so much judgment just off physical appearance. And we live in this world where everybody just tells you, just be confident, just own the way you look and own the way you sound and just roll through life owning you. And then you also get all this weird feedback about when you do that, people have opinions and have something to say. And I just love that you said, don't let anybody put you in a box. Once you start doing the thing you're really meant to be doing, like you're going to start attracting the roles. You're going to start attracting the right like gigs and shows or operas in your instance, right?
No, of course. And I think a lot of it is also like you need to show the people on the other side of the table who are casting, you need to like serve them on a platter exactly what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. I think that in general, there's very little imagination in the opera world, and casting looks at you and they want to be able to picture you as that role very quickly. So you don't want to have to like make them guess or have them try to figure out a lot of things. So the way you dress in an audition, the way you present yourself, the repertoire that you offer, I think is all very important. I had an audition last year for a role. This is actually one of the things that we're going to be, I think, talking about later in the podcast, but for the role of the Marquise in La Fille du Régiment. And she is a older, haughty woman, but she has a child who is, let's say like around 16. So she's not ancient. She's not a grandmother. She's, let's say like 45 tops, so very much around my age. But people, 45 in real life now versus 45 on stage, like 45 on stage, you do need to look like one of the Golden Girls. Like, I think, they're like, oh, that's an old person. And that's a role that I've been wanting to do for a while. This was with a company. And I auditioned, and the director who runs the opera company is also the stage director, talks to everyone afterwards and wants to like chat, which is a little unorthodox, but I think like I knew that going in there. So we pulled up a chair, we chatted a little bit, and he, this isn't verbatim, but he basically said like, I can't picture you in these roles, like, because you're so young and beautiful. Which, world's tiniest violin. Like I should have been like, oh, thank you so much. But I had to basically like Miss America speech myself into the role that I ended up getting cast in and say like, well, I think it's about the voice. I think it's about portraying the character, da 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 da. And I think, if people have a certain idea in their head about the character, and this also has to do with if you are working at the Metropolitan Opera in these huge houses, a lot of the times they have much older established opera singers who have certain body types, like larger women, doing some of the roles that I do. So in their head, if the director with these smaller companies in their head has it that I should look like that person, I'm never going to fit. I have to do my own version of the character. And I basically said in so many words that I feel very confidently that when you put me on stage, the audience will connect with me. Like, I effing promise you, I will go out there and I know stagecraft. I know how to pull attention, get attention, come on with energy. I think you have to be a little delusional. So excuse my like crassness in this, but you know, audiences connect with me, and it's through like years and years of training, and every movement I make is calculated. And I know that the audience has a good time watching me, and they're interacting, they're laughing, and I don't have to look like this other person. And I basically gave that speech, you know, less aggressively than I am now. I was a little more just like smiley and pleasant in the audition, but I was able to convince them, and I ended up getting the cover for that, which is in the opera world, like the understudy, which is great. I just needed, and I did get a performance, so I didn't have to put cover on my resume. I just like actually did it. And that gave me the opportunity to do that role, which means that it's on my resume. I've done the aria. When I walk into auditions now, there is no question of like, oh, well, can she do this role? I mean, there could be a question of like whether they want to cast me in the role, for sure. I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And I took that role specifically because I was up for the role at a different opera company later next season. And I was like, if I want the experience of like putting this role on its feet, getting the experience of doing it, so that when I go to this bigger house, I've already done it. And I have the experience of doing it. And I think that climbing the ladder, it's very important in opera. You know, a lot of it is like sometimes you take smaller gigs or gigs that don't pay as much because it's a role you really want to do, or it's something that a project that means a lot to you or you think is going to help you later in your career. So you kind of, you know, quote unquote, like take a loss because you know in the long run it's going to be good. And like for me, I just needed someone to give me this role. Mm-hmm. I just needed someone to be like, yes, you can do it. And then I could run with it and do it. And now it's like one of the arias that I present in my package. I'm doing it upcoming next season, and I feel significantly more confident, but I had to really fight.
Right. I think that's so great for listeners to hear. You really need to advocate for yourself, have your own back first. And I think this is a really great segue because, like I said earlier, as a classical and jazz pianist, my world has never truly collided with the world of opera, which is why I was so excited to have this conversation with you. And I also want to, besides having this podcast be a resource for musicians who need community or just need support in whatever genre they fall, I want to debunk preconceived ideas and expand awareness of all genres of music. So can you describe the opera world to me as a classical and jazz pianist and singer-songwriter? What does the opera world look like? Is it as competitive and rigorous as it seems? Paint a picture for me.
It's extremely competitive. The world of opera is extremely competitive. And I think to kind of delve a little deeper into that, not only is it just competitive and there's a ton of opera singers. Whenever I talk to someone who's not in that world, they're like, I've never met an opera singer. That must be so fun. And I'm like, well, there's too many of us. Like they all need to go away. There's too much competition. There's so many talented people. And the thing about opera is it takes decades and the training is so intense. It's like the Olympics of singing, and you have to sing super high, super low over a full orchestra with no microphone, you know, sing in a bunch of different languages. You know, operas are usually anywhere from like a shorter version, like an hour to 3-4 hours long, where you have to sing again with no microphone. It's very rigorous. And with all of that, you know, people train and they go to school for it. And I think some younger singers, and I will say, I think I also fell into this as well, is you go to school for something and then you think you just are that thing. You're like, oh, I'll get my bachelor's of music and vocal performance, and then I'll graduate and I will be an opera singer. But the problem is like you graduate and then like nothing happens and you just have to do it. You know, of course, like people talk about things, but it's really like you have to find your own way. And there's not one path for everyone. There's kind of like I would say I'll call like a standard path of you get into young artist programs and then eventually get a manager and then eventually go to main stage. But that's, you know, or win a big competition. But there's many different ways to kind of go about it. But you really have to like go through a lot in your 20s until you're at a place really in like your 30s and 40s singing professionally. So a lot of people end up quitting. It's also extremely expensive being an opera singer, which again, any opera singers listening are like, yes, 1000%. Like it's incredibly expensive. And a lot of people just can't afford to do it. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not the best, the most talented, most amazing voices are the people that are singing. A lot of the most amazing voices, like some of my friends have the most amazing instruments. They're wonderful musicians and they just couldn't afford to keep doing it. It's just too expensive. And sometimes it's, if you have wealthy parents or, you know, married to someone who can support you fully. And I mean, the ugly truth about it, you know, like there are certainly people who are incredibly, incredibly talented that just had to quit and now they are yoga teachers or sell real estate.
Right. Yeah. And I'm curious, what is it about opera that keeps bringing you back? Is it the art of it? Is it I mean, it sounds like it's extremely competitive. You aren't making a large income, and there's a lot of sizing up that happens from the moment you walk in the door
Now you say it out loud. I don't really know why. Why I'm doing this.
But I mean, nonetheless, I mean, you're doing it and you do it with such passion and rigor, and so many other people do. And this is something like I'm so deeply curious about. There's something that's bringing you to this art form. There's something that made you, if you were able to have the financial resources to spend the money that you said is required, what made you say yes to opera and continue to pursue it with this level of grit, knowing all of kind of the shit sandwich that it hands you, but also there's obviously a tremendous upside. And I'd love to hear what that is that offsets the challenges, or maybe there's not. I'm like, what keeps drawing you back? Like, because the amount of rigorous practice, and I want to hear a little bit about like what your practice schedule looks like and what your routine looks like and what your training is. But you've had to put so much time and energy and effort into this.
So I'll say this. I had to be okay with failure, with a lot of failure, and with getting a lot of no's, and just like continuing to put myself out there. And some people are going to be super into me and love it. And some people just like don't get it. I'm just like not it for them. And that's fine. I mean, they're wrong. They should be casting me, but you know, I'm not going to win them over by like pretending to be someone else or like trying to make myself a version of like what they want. Like I need to do what I do and they either like it or they don't. And I think specifically for me as a contralto, it is very niche. So, you know, people are going to have ideas about who they want in the, you know, the roles that I do. I have to have a certain level of delusion and believe in myself more than anyone. I think what makes me a little different kind of staying in this business versus some of, let's say, my colleagues who have quit. Like I was never the best person in the room. I was not winning competitions. I was not considered a super impressive singer, really, for like most of my life. So I have, and again, like, as I said in the beginning, I didn't grow up playing an instrument. Like a lot of this stuff, like acting came easily to me, but really everything else, languages, just basic musicianship, a lot of that like doesn't come naturally to me. Like vocal technique, I really, really had to bust my butt and work to get to the level that I'm at. And some of my friends and colleagues had a ton of success when they were younger and they were amazing singers and they just kind of rolled out of bed and had these amazing voices, and their voices were mature when they were 20s. They were like lighter sopranos, you know, and in their early 20s, they sang the rep that they were going to sing and they sounded beautiful and they looked like their voice part and they had great technique and they were winning all these competitions and doing super well. And then as they got older and it was getting more competitive and the bar was getting raised and they weren't winning every competition, they weren't getting into the young artist programs, they were alternates. You know, if they did get into a young artist program, it paid very, very little and they would end up losing money. They didn't get that same high because a lot of them, I think, were singing for that high, for that, like getting the award and winning and being the best and having that. And like, as someone who was not the best, I never was singing for that reason because I never won anything. And also I'm not trying to like create a sob story. I've had like a wonderful life. Like it's like we're fine over here, but I really had to work. And like people who have heard me, who heard me when I was younger, I remember people would be like, oh, well, she's never going to be a singer. Like there was just too many technical issues. Like, I mean, just based on the fact that like I couldn't sing high, going between like my middle voice and head voice was a disaster. I had major pitch issues. Like singing in tune was like very difficult for me. Again, languages were really hard. Like it just didn't come naturally to me. And a lot of people didn't think that I was going to make it. And I was just like, nope, I'm just not quitting. Like, I'm just going to keep doing it. And like, lucky for me, the roles that I play do tend to be older people. So I'm really not aging out. I'm just getting better as I get older and continuing to take coachings and lessons and train and, keep that upward momentum. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I
feel
love
like
hearing that.
like three different little tangents there.
No, I love hearing that. It sounds like it's so much more about grit and determination than it is about talent. And
Oh, 100%. There are people who are like way more talented than me that quit.
well, it's like it's talent is like it gets you so far, but then it's the grit, right? And like obviously I believe you have to have like at least some part of you that you really want to develop, right? Whether it's musical or otherwise. And some people call that talent, but I do think it's the grit and determination that you were talking about that keeps people going. And you referenced earlier as well about how maybe it's delusional, but you just have to believe in yourself and have your own back, even if other people don't. And I believe that rather than that being delusional, that's really actually like the reality we need to live in, because if we don't have our own backs, it doesn't matter what other people have to say about our voice or how we present on stage. And I'm curious, was that just how you came into the world? Like you're just like, this is me and I'm going to stick with it? Or was there a moment where, somebody gave you some really hard feedback about your voice and you had to have a moment with yourself to decide, am I going to keep doing this or not?
I think it sounds much better for me to give an answer where I say, there was a moment that I felt like giving up and then I came back and like fought hard. But I've always had a lot of confidence. That's kind of like the gross answer is like, I just have, I'm an only child. Like my parents have praised me my whole life. I just never doubted myself. That being said, I was hyper aware of my flaws. Like I know exactly what I need to work on. That doesn't mean that like when I'm singing, I'm like, that was amazing. Like usually when I sing, I'm immediately like watching videos back and being like, ooh, this, like sending videos to my coach, sending videos to my voice teacher. And he's like, no, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And I'm like, okay. But I think I just have such a love for like when I am not doing something correctly, like I want to fix it and I want to be better. And I always want to strive to be better. And I'm like that in every aspect of my life. So it's really, I think, just a personality trait. Like even when I was waitressing, I think it's just in my personality. Like it doesn't matter, what random, like I worked at Victoria's Secret, I worked at Cold Stone Creamery. Like I've had all sorts of random jobs. I always would come to work and want to just do the best job, even if I was getting paid minimum wage. Like it didn't matter. I wanted to do a good job for me, if that makes sense. And that's what it's like with opera.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think having true confidence in yourself is a beautiful trait that there's nothing gross about it, right? And I think that it's interesting, especially in the musical world and otherwise, it's almost like we're supposed to just self-flagellate or like be hard on ourselves over the top. And I loved your answer because I think that it's really having true confidence in yourself is such a beautiful quality, and it's what has carried you through, and that's what I believe has carried most people through their career, because at some point, I mean, there is hardship in being an artist regardless of the genre, and you really do need to believe in what you have to say as an artist, number one. So I loved hearing you say that. I thought it was a great answer.
And it's like, how are you supposed to walk into an audition room to try to, and okay, this is controversial. A lot of people say, like, you should just walk in and do what you do and you're not trying to convince anyone. But, like, let's be real. I am trying to convince people on the other side of the table to hire me.
Right.
That doesn't mean I'm like changing what I'm doing or whatever. Like, I'm going in and presenting myself as myself, but I do want them to hire me. And I am trying to convince them to hire me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't understand how I can walk into, I mean, I guess fake it till you make it, but like how you can walk into a room and be thinking like, I'm not really the best person for this, you know, and then like go and sing your arias with like confidence. Like I go in and I don't say in my head, I'm not like, I'm the best person for this, they should hire me. But I go in and I'm like, I am a very good option. Yeah. And I should be considered and I'm worthy of being considered.
Absolutely. So on this note of inner confidence, have you ever struggled with any sort of inner critic or ever struggled with any kind of performance anxiety, or is that something that really has never been a part of your journey?
It has. So yes, I did struggle with nerves when I was in high school, especially when I was auditioning for colleges. And I would get really nervous. And it was something that I read The Inner Game of Tennis. That was really helpful. And I've definitely done like tapping work when I was younger. And when I was in high school, I took beta blockers before auditions because it would get to a point where I would walk onto the stage or wherever I was performing to do this audition, and I would be like running out of breath. I couldn't catch my breath. And then I have to go sing, and I'm like heaving and not able to actually breathe. Again, like not to overly age myself, but I've just like been in this for so long. Right. It feels like 100 years. Like I feels like I've been doing this forever. And you know, now I'm at a point where it's just like, I walk into the room, and especially I'll say, I know this wasn't really your question, but especially after having children, like I have a whole effing life with my family. And singing is something that adds to my life, that, you know, fulfills something, but it's not my life. On social media, it looks like my life, but that's just because I don't post my children really online, right? But I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I teach voice lessons, and like, that's my life, you know? Where I live now in New York, like all of my mom friends, like none of them are opera singers. Like I'm just a mom to everyone else. I'm just a mom. And then they see my social media and they're like, oh, you're a singer? You know, and then all my singer friends are like, you're a mom? And I'm like, yeah, like I have these two lives that I keep like very separate from each other. But especially after having children, I just like, it's so hard for me to care the amount that I cared when I was in my 20s, where like every audition just felt like the end all be all. And, you know, now I'm just like, I have two kids at home. Like I have to get back to the babysitter. I go in, I sing the audition. I hope I do well. And then I like have to go back home. And it's just like, if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't.
Correct. Yeah. I love hearing that because I think it is, we are not our art. I mean, that might be debatable for some people, but you know, what we do is not who we are. But I think that this whole concept of finding so much depth and beauty in other areas of life that then make your art rich is more of like the successful pyramid versus the upside down pyramid of like, I'm my art and everything is based off of how I perform. And so I love that you have that well-rounded life and that they don't necessarily have to collide, but they are kind of self-supporting each other in this interesting way, right? Your home life and your musical life and your circle of moms that don't know you're an opera singer. Talk to me about what your pregame looks like. So, you know, athletes have their whole routine that they do before they get out and play the game or run the race. You're, you know, about to go on stage. You know, what do you do beforehand to prepare yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, any component of that that you can speak to?
Sure. And this is super individual. I love hearing other opera singers kind of go-tos. Mm-hmm. Mine's not super glamorous. I do try to move my body somewhat or work out in the morning. I think like ideally that's the best, just to like connect me to me and myself. But definitely This is in no particular order. I definitely have to eat something. I don't have reflux, like I eat whatever. So, I mean, honestly, it's normally I'm grabbing something on the way to the theater. And I usually just grab like fast food. So that's like very controversial. People don't like that, but I'll usually just grab like McDonald's, like the largest iced coffee that I could find. I have a huge water bottle. I make sure to warm up before I get to the theater and then ask the stage manager, if I'm able to warm up for like 5-10 minutes on the stage. I find to be very helpful. So I can just kind of walk just a little bit of my track of what I'm doing, kind of stand in the sections that I'm going to be standing in and really feel what it feels like to sing in that theater. Also, different positions on the stage are going to give you, different acoustics like in the hall. So within the director's blocking, I will try to find those like sweet spots and like plant myself on those spots that are going to make me as loud and resonant as humanly possible. So warming up on the stage, coffee, and in the dressing room, I always have my score with me. I always have my score backstage at all times. And I will, if I have time, depending on the role and like how much time I have in between scenes, I will walk my track a little bit, meaning I will have my score out and I will go through and say the words with my score kind of open, not testing myself, but like looking at it and going through and doing all of the movements that I want to do and making sure I know exactly when I need to turn or exactly when I need to cue into the conductor. So also that goes back to any notes that I've gotten from the director, from the conductor. I have those written down and I make sure to review all of those and work that into when I'm kind of like walking the track or doing what I'm doing. That's kind of it. It's not too much.
But it's a little something that gets your head in the game. And I think that so many athletes, especially, have such a, I don't know, specific thing they love to do. And I'm always curious to hear from musicians because I don't get that. People don't talk about that much, at least not necessarily in the classical and jazz world. It's like you're just up there and then you play. It's great.
And I
it's
will
like,
say
no.
my voice teacher is great. I usually listen to whatever the most like recent voice lesson was and like warm up with that. But sometimes my voice teacher is also an opera singer and he will do Zoom lessons. So a lot of the times I will schedule like way in advance, like a 15-minute warm up with him. And it will just get me like lined up exactly where I want to be. If I'm singing a little in one way or a different way, he'll kind of help me guide it into the right direction. And it really makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Just getting your head in the game. So you chose to share your powerful performance of Pour une femme du Mon Nom from Donizetti's opera Le Fille du Régiment. And listeners will get to hear your beautiful performance of it at the end. So for those of us out there that don't speak French, can you translate the meaning of this piece and the context within the opera storyline? Explain a little bit what the story is behind it and why you chose to share it for our audience.
Sure. So the reason why I chose this piece, and really it's more of like the role, this role is very challenging. And this is something we kind of touched on like yesterday when we were talking. So the reason I picked it is it was such a challenge for me to get this role on my resume. People do La Fille du Régiment, but it's not super common. So in terms of operas, it's hard to find companies that are at the level that I'm singing at currently, where I can be cast, where I'm available, where I can make the audition, like all of that, like everything. The stars need to kind of like line up in a lot of ways. So when I got this role, it was a role that I felt like for my FOC, for the contralto FOC, makes a lot of sense. So it makes my resume more cohesive. When I was talking about earlier of like I was singing mezzo and, when I was in my 20s, I wasn't really doing the roles that I wanted to be doing. This is a role that I want to be doing. This is a role that I could be doing for a very long time. And having it on my resume gives people on the other side of the table, the auditioners, a clear picture of who I am and the kinds of roles that I'm doing. So this is something that not only do I feel like is a role that I can do, but what makes it really interesting is there's a lot of dialogue in this opera. So most operas are sung and there's not dialogue in them. Musicals, for instance, like musical theater, the main difference is they use microphones when they sing, so they can do more like spoken and soft singing, whereas opera, you have to sing over a full orchestra. But the musical theater is mic'd, and it has a lot of dialogue in general. So lots of lines. It's more like a play with music. Opera is just music. Sometimes there's dialogue. So in this opera, there's dialogue.
Yes, you. Très bien. Très bien. Enfin, je voulais dire pas moi, mais ma sœur.
And as someone, and again, we touched on this earlier, I started off acting first, like not playing an instrument, but I started off as an actor. The dialogue has been always something that I feel very comfortable with, and I love doing and figuring out the timing of it. So acting as an opera singer, you have the benefit of music, of doing, of the music kind of leading you. And you can work within the context of the beats and the line of the music to help your acting. Versus just the dialogue itself, you have nothing. It's like just you doing everything. And with this role in particular, it's in French. And I am not fluent in French. So it was a huge, this role, particularly with this company, was the hardest thing that I've ever done. You know, without like throwing anyone under the bus, like we didn't get the dialogue crazy far in advance. So it was a little rushed for me. And, you know, being a stay-at-home mom and like with the kids most of the time, like I was setting my alarm every day before the kids got up and would make myself coffee and would sit down, and I just had note cards, and I would be like writing out note cards and like memorizing it and doing all of it. And
Wow.
that was like really hard. Like for a while, I didn't know if it was going to be okay. Like if I was going to be able to like actually do it.
Yeah, it's some of these challenges, you know, you make it look so easy on stage, but it's important for people to know like this takes so much effort and time and dedication. So
Yes, I mean, it was, and
hear.
I had to drag myself, you know, like you were like a question that you asked a while ago that I kind of glossed over. It was like practicing and like how you practice and your practice schedule and like all that stuff. And, you know, sure, some of it is you're sitting at the piano and you're listening to old voice lessons and you're singing and you're going through, you know, certain sections and like drilling things. But some of it is what I call kitchen table work. And that's not my phrase. That's actually one of my old voice teachers, where you're just sitting and you're translating, or you're going through and you're just speaking the text and just getting it in your mouth, or you're going through and making note cards.
So before we wrap up, is there any inspiration or wisdom you can give to musicians out there that are either trying to embrace their authentic musical voice or are kind of in the musical trenches and going through it and need to access their inner grit? Is there any nugget you could give that might be helpful to hear?
I mean, there's so many. I would say to really focus on what you need. It's so hard, but try your best to put on blinders and not compare yourself to other people and where you think you should be for your, you know, age, or for you went to this program or this school or whatever. Like, what do you need to work on to get to the level that you want to be at? So if there are things technically that you want to work on, like get with a teacher that's actually working on it with you. If they're not, find another teacher. Like fix the things about yourself and improve the things about yourself that you want to do to get to the next level. Like come up with an actual plan for yourself without looking at anyone else.
I love that. Yeah, find what you need and seek it, and don't compare yourself to others.
Yeah, I mean, it's so like we always do, but I really feel, I forget what that quote is, but like the comparison is the thief of joy.
Of joy.
Right? I mean, it's true. Like, even I'm so excited about the roles that I have coming up and the season that I have upcoming. And it's some house debuts and some role debuts, and I'm like thrilled to be doing it. But, you know, I'm also like, oh, well, I want to sing here and I want to sing here. And like, how do I get in this place? And like, it's just like never enough. Like, I always want more. And I always, you know, I think it also is like when you're looking at other people, it always seems like everyone else is doing more.
Absolutely. Thank you, Emily. That's super helpful. How can people best get in touch with you? I know you have your website, emilygeller.com.
Yeah.
And then you have your TikTok and Instagram, and people can find you there as well. Is that at Emily Geller as well?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking to hire me, I would say my website, because you can contact my agents, but you're also welcome to just like, if you're a person in the world and want to chat or whatever, feel free to slide into my DMs on Instagram or Facebook.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Artistry with Heart and for sharing your wisdom with the world, Emily. We hope you'll stay tuned for future episodes like this one. Listeners out there, if you've heard something that resonated with you that you want more of, make sure to download the journal prompt PDF directly related to Emily's episode that you can find in my show notes or on my website, stephaniebernards.org/inspiration. And here you can go deeper with some of the questions that we talked about today with yourself and your personal artistry, because I hope that's why you're here. That's all for now. Until next time, be you and stay inspired. And now, the full version of La Fille du Régiment. Heads up, friends, we're also on Patreon. This podcast was created to support every creative, so if you like the work that we're doing, please consider subscribing to help us continue making content and grow our community. For just $7 a month, you'll not only be supporting more resources for musicians, but you'll also gain access to downloadable journal prompt PDFs with insightful questions that will help you go deeper with the conversations in each episode.